Recording is on.
Well, to start, I would love to learn more about you. College did you go to? What did you major in? What are your interests right now?
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me over, Sweeta. So I'm Dr. Carmen Pulido. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I attended the University of California, San Diego, that is located in La Jolla. That's where I did my college education, and then I transferred to graduate school. So I stayed in San Diego, and I went to the San Diego State University and UCSD joint doctoral program in clinical psychology. So these two universities, they have like a very funny plan where together they collaborate to provide the education in clinical psychology to trainees.
So why did you decide to become a clinical psychologist at NASA?
See, I never thought that I would be working for NASA, to be quite honest. This was just an opportunity that became available. So when I first learned about the opening at NASA, I thought, well, that would be great. I was not living in Houston or, even nearby, but I look at the qualifications that they were looking for a psychologist, and it is very interesting because even without really pursuing this position, it's almost like if it was tailor-made for me. It was saying everything that I had in my experience, everything that I had in terms of my training. So it was really an excellent fit and a very interesting and challenging opportunity because it is a brand new position that had never been filled before.
Nice. So what did your general day-to-day look like before quarantine?
So I was spending all of my day in an office where I share space with other psychologists, my peers. They work with active crews. So they work on astronaut selection, and they work with active astronauts who are being trained for missions to space and for some other tasks. So I was spending a lot of time with them, but also sporadically meeting with our former astronauts because my job is to provide clinical services and conduct research with our former astronauts. So I would meet with them as they would come to the Johnson Space Center Medical Clinic.
Nice. So how has COVID affected the way you conduct your job?
Oh, it has changed everything, Sweeta. One of the first things that happened is that I had to move all of my clinical services from being face-to-face interaction to be telehealth. And I had to learn how to find platforms where I could conduct clinical work in a private setting and in a way that it would be confidential. I also started learning about the possibility of doing neuropsychological assessment, and that's kind of assessment that you do to test a person's thinking abilities. But doing that through a virtual platform like the one that we're having right now. In the past, I had never even been in my realm of ideas to start looking at into that possibility. But to be quite honest, I think that even after the situation with COVID gets resolved, there's going to be a lot of individuals who, for health issues or because they are aging, they may feel more comfortable just meeting virtually instead of traveling all the way to a specific clinic, not only for my population who are former astronauts, but also other people in general. So it's good to know about, how to do work virtually.
Yep. So what would you say is the most challenging aspect of your job?
The most challenging part is that it has never been done before. So what that means is that I have to plan on developing a program that meets the expectations of everyone who is involved. So that means other psychologists, medical doctors, and the clients that we are providing services for, in addition to the agency and administrative expectations that have to do with costs and things like that. In addition to that, because it has never been carried on, and the task that I have is to figure out what are the mental health, behavioral health, and cognitive effects of spaceflight. We really don't know what are those effects because we have never studied them. So that is a challenge, trying to extrapolate from really nothing and figure out what are areas that need to be evaluated, right? If I know that there's a risk factor, if I knew, for instance, that a space flight had to do with, your finger growing longer, then I would know that I need to measure your finger, right? That I need to keep monitoring any potential growth or changes. But when we don't know anything, then everything is possible, and that means that I need to consider a lot of things as part of my work. That's challenging.
Similar to the last question, what would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
Oh, working with former astronauts. Oh my God, these are individuals that are so talented. They're intelligent. They are pleasant. They are experienced. They have so much knowledge and such a unique experiences. And actually, just before I talked to you, I met with another one virtually. And I feel so honored, so humble, and privileged to be working with this very unique population. I mean, a lot of people work with active astronauts. So there's a lot of psychologists, but I work with the people who have already gone to space and who have already have complete careers at the agency. So that is really, really exciting and very rewarding.
What is the favorite thing you have done or story you have as a part of your job?
My favorite story, so like I said, all of our former astronauts are people that I am working with. But my favorite part is when I attended their astronaut reunion. So I was just there waiting for them to come in because I wanted to introduce myself and I wanted them to know who I am and what I was going to be doing. And I was like a child in a candy store, Sweeta. I was just looking at all these individuals that have incredible careers in space flight, just walking one after the other. And I'm recognizing their faces because I have read their books, because I have read their biographies, because I have looked at videos of their missions. And that's a memory and an emotional experience together that I'm going to carry with me for a long, long time. It was very exciting.
What piece of advice would you give to students aspiring to become clinical psychologists at space agencies themselves one day?
Well, regardless of whether a person wants to carry on a career in a space agency, or regardless of whether they want to be clinical psychologists, my fundamental advice is that no matter what you do it well. Be aware that other people are observing you, because those individuals are the ones that are going to help you and be a platform for you to reach better places. It doesn't matter what job you have, Sweeta, you're going to need letters of recommendations, and that comes from people who are very pleased with your work. Now, if a person has already accomplished a clinical degree and they want to work with any particular population, that being astronauts or you name any kind of population, just work with individuals who are closely related to them. So, for instance, one of the advantages that I had in terms of my background is that, of course, I have never worked with astronauts because I have never worked in this at NASA in this agency, right? But I have worked with executives, so people who are highly educated, who have very important positions that had a lot of weight. I have also worked with veterans, and we know that in NASA we have a lot of astronauts and former astronauts who have a military background. So pursuing working with individuals who are very similar to the population that you are, that you're aiming at working with in the future, it's a good way to setting up steps towards that goal.
Last question. What is one thing you would advise aspiring clinical psychologists to start doing today? For a general high school, college population, it could be reading a specific book or listening to a podcast.
What I would say is, for being a clinical psychologist, one of the most fundamental skills that we need to have is to care for other people and to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of others. So that means is that, I'm a Hispanic female in my 40s, but I need to be able to know what it feels like to be a high school boy, right? And I need to be able to know what it feels like to what it's like to be a 5-year-old girl who maybe her parents are going through divorce. And I need to be able to put myself in the shoes of an elderly individual. So more than any specific book or training or academic thing to do, what I would advise is for a person for us to get in touch with the human nature of others, and to put ourselves in the shoes of other individuals, even if they appear to be very, very different than us, right? That we need to give ourselves the opportunity to challenge our way of thinking and how our background make us think that the world is the way how we live it, and for us to be able to think what it might feel like to be, you know, in the position of a different person, of a different gender, a person of a different age, a person of a different ethnicity, a person of a different sexual orientation, you know, etc.
That's all the questions I have for you today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me here.